No, all right, all right, all right. Okay, so we're looking at and discussing inverse functions and relations. And a function may have an inverse. That does not mean that the inverse of a function is itself a function. It may be, it may not be. But what we're going to focus on right now is finding an inverse. Now, there's certain steps that we have to go about if we're going to find an inverse, if we're going to take a function and determine what its inverse is. And I'm going to go over the steps first, and then we're going to take a look at a couple of examples. So here's our steps. We can recognize a function. We see f of x equals, let's say, something like x plus 3 or whatever it may be, x squared plus 2x minus 6, whatever. But first step one is we replace f of x with y. Then we exchange x and y. We solve for y. Step 3 is solving for y. And then finally is how we write the notation. We replace y with f negative 1 of x. And that's telling us that that is an inverse relation or function. Okay, there's our steps. Replace f of x with y, exchange x and y, solve for y, replace y with f negative 1 of x. It sounds more complicated than it really is. Let's go take a look. Okay, so we're going to go through finding an inverse. And this is coming from pages 395, 394, and 395 in your textbook. I'm doing the guided practice in example 2. So let's start here with 2a. I've got f of x equals x minus 3 over 5. And let's see, step 1 is I'm going to replace f of x with y. So I've got y equals x minus 3 over 5. Then step 2 is to exchange x and y. So now I've got x equals y minus 3 over 5. And step 3 is to solve for y. So, and looking at this particular equation, I first want to multiply both sides by 5 because that's going to allow me to clear out that denominator. And it's going to leave me with 5x equals y minus 3. And I'm going to continue to go ahead and isolate the y. I'm going to add both sides I'm going to add 3 to both sides. It's going to give me 5x plus 3 equals y. And last step is to write it in inverse function notation, which is f negative 1 of x equals 5x plus 3. All right, Shazam. There we go. All right, let's look at the second one. The second one, we've got f of x equals 3x squared. All right, what was step 1? Well, step 1 was to exchange f of x with y. So I've got y equals 3x squared. Step 2, anyone? Exchange x and y. So I've got x equals 3y squared. And step 3 is to solve for y. Well, I've got this 3y squared, so I'm first going to, remember when you're doing everything, and you're doing PEMDAS in reverse. So I don't have anything to add or subtract, but I do have something to multiply and divide, and I can divide both sides by 3, which is going to give me then 1/3 x equals y squared. And then I'm going to deal with my exponents, which means if I got a y squared on this right side of the equation, the inverse of y squared is a square root. And so I'm going to have plus or minus the square root of 1/3 x equals y. And what's the last step? We're going to write it in inverse function notation, which is f negative 1 of x equals plus or minus, can't make a plus or minus the square root of 1/3 x. Boom. See, it's really not so bad. After all, this is what we do. We solve problems.